Well, that conversation is definitely an endless one. You can tell we've been talking about it for eons. So, Trucks Transit Parks Limited is an indigenous technology company, providing innovative traffic management solutions. And it's celebrating 1 year of its establishment. So, what has this got to do with the ports? You'll find out from Jama Onwubuarire, who is co-founder and managing director of Trucks Transit Parks Limited. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, sir, for having me.
Okay. Has the ports cleared now?
Okay.
That's the...
Yes. So maybe if you permit me to rephrase the question slightly, has the port road congestion cleared? The answer is yes, to a very large extent.
We also heard that the ports themselves were a bit congested.
Yes, so port congestion actually is circumstantial. And when I say circumstantial, what I mean is there are different scenarios that could cause the internal of the port to be congested. For example, there could be equipment downtime by the terminal operators. You could have situations where there is like strike that happened a few days ago. So sometimes that affects the maritime workers unions who work within the ports.
But the access roads are...
Our operation is for the port access roads. So that's the focus of our project.
Okay.
Yes.
Now tell us about this project.
Okay. So the Eto Call-Up project is an indigenous solution to the intractable problem of Apapa port road congestion.
Eto.
Yes.
ETO stands for?
So Eto is arrange in Yoruba or order in Yoruba. And we chose an indigenous name because no other country in the world we know of have the kind of problem that we have. Every country in the world has some form of traffic or congestion problem, but ours is unique because to a large extent.
They have such problems at the ports.
Many ports around the world actually have congestion towards the ports. Yes, but
access.
Yes, access, but not to the extent that we have in Apapa.
Okay.
I'll tell you a funny story. My co-founder and I visited the Jebel Ali port in Dubai in 2018. And on arriving at the port and introducing ourselves as Nigerians, they asked us, how is your Apapa port?
So what an embarrassment.
So that is how notorious the traffic congestion around our port.
What kind of fame is that?
Well, it's a narrative that we are now trying to change.
Infamy, you mean?
Yes, it's infamous. So we're trying to change that narrative. Now, the reason why we say the problem we have along the Apapa Port Road is unique is because it's 90% man-made and 10% infrastructure deficit. So the 90% man-made is that you have different stakeholders, different actors who are involved in managing traffic, who are involved in the build-up of the traffic along the port access roads, whose interests are not necessarily aligned to that of the general public. So you may have the transporter who wants to get ahead of every other person who wants to get to the port, because the closer you are to the port, the more likely you're going to get the most ready business of evacuating a container or other cargo out of the port. You have the law enforcement agent who sees the port access route as a big pot of soup. Yes, that is very lucrative. So sometimes they even lobby to get posted to traffic management within the Apapa environment. You also have the unions who may aggregate their members ostensibly for the purpose of making life easier, but then individuals' interest come in between that of the public. So when you combine all of this, you have a 90% cost of the congestion. And then the 10% I mentioned relates to depleted infrastructure. So as we may all be aware, the Apapa Port roads built in the early 1930s and then renovated and tried to be expanded in the 70s and 80s have not been able to catch up with our population growth. And because we are mainly import dependent, this infrastructure cannot support the amount of traffic that needs to import the materials we need for our day-to-day lives. So these are the factors that have snowballed into the traffic problem which we stepped in.
Well, perhaps the question then, yes, thank you for that. Perhaps the question then would be, how do we sustain the impact of Eto currently being witnessed?
Okay. Again, like I said, because there is the 90% human intervention, we've sought to reduce towards potentially eliminating the human interference. So one of the things we've done is to automate the process of booking access to go on the road, to go into the port. So what Eto does is a booking and scheduling system. So if you want to go to, let me illustrate with you going to the airport, for instance. You want to go to Abuja tomorrow. It may not be the most efficient thing for you to step up at 10 a.m., get to the airport, and say, put me on the plane that is going in the next 30 minutes. So the most efficient thing is for you to book in advance, so that space can be created for you. The airline can expect you, and arrangement can be made to service you when you arrive. So that also helps in scheduling, perhaps the airline knowing how many flights they're going to do in a day because of the number of requests they get for bookings. So ATO registers all the trucks that are going into the port and the drivers who are going to drive them, the owners of these trucks, and a few more details that help us to be able to establish to a reasonable extent this truck belongs to this person. Now, you fund your wallet also on the ATO app, and when you now need to go into the port because you have a ready business, you can book one of your trucks that are already on the platform, match it to a driver that you've already registered as those who conduct your fleet, and the terminal you're going to would then notify us when they expect you to come. So on the basis of that, we release in trickles trucks that are hitting the road on their way to the port. So by putting it this way, you reduce a lot of the human involvement.
And how has that been received? Because depending on who you're talking to, they're wondering what's going on here. So how is this solution perceived by the users and these human elements that you talked about?
Okay, we've met a lot of opposition from members of the old order.
That's to be expected.
Yes, so who kicked against using the system because it sort of limits their sphere of influence, and therefore, like I said before, their pot of soup is depleted. So that opposition is there. But to the common user, the driver and the transporter who needs to go into the port from time to time, it's been very well received. And one way I can say it's been very well received is that you cannot gain access into the Apapa and Tinkan Island ports today without having to pass through this scheduling system. Between when we started on February 27th, 2021 and today, we've scheduled about 600,000 trucks into the ports and the port environment. So it's not just the ports, but you also have facilities like flour mills and other manufacturing concerns that are within Apapa that Lagos State also have brought onto this scheduling platform. So before you can come into Apapa, you need to be on that schedule, and then you can be brought in. So it's been very well received. But like I mentioned earlier, we've met pockets of opposition.
Okay.
From the old
When ATO was first introduced about a year ago, we had fantastic reviews on this program. The users came here and spoke about it. And then a few months later, they were invited to come back. And they spoke about all kinds of disruptions.
Correct.
And how people were trying to bypass the system, and how all kinds of shenanigans were going on. Now, tell us about what it's like now. Because with that system, there's really no need for congestion on the roads to the port. You are only on the road if it's your day and if it's towards the time that you have been scheduled to enter the ports.
Correct. So like every other system, there cannot be perfection as long as you have human involvement at one point or the other. And I will give you some examples. So some of the complaints that you received was actually true. Some of them are true. Now, you have sometimes enforcement agents on the road who would collect money from transporters and ask them to stay here while you try to perfect your booking. Yes, so that contributes to the continued congestion. So as at this morning, in fact, as at early this morning at 1 a.m., we had a high influx of trucks that are carrying containers that are trying to gain access into the ports, thereby blocking the access for those who already have their ready bookings and are being expected in the ports. So we expect that the agencies responsible for ensuring free flow of movement on the road would persuade them, that's the expression we prefer to use, persuade them, encourage them to go in, or you turn back and go to your holding bay and
go back to the holding bay.
Correct, until you are called.
Yeah.
So because of this involvement of other agencies apart from ourselves as a private entity, there's a limit to what technology can do if the drivers or if the influencers are also not aligned to the same point of view. But what have we done? So we've started gathering data of these infractions, and we make this data available to the government so that consequence management can be applied. We also have a very active stakeholder engagement. So the transporters...
My apologies.
Yes.
You talked about consequence management.
Consequence management.
What does that mean?
So consequence management means that if you approach the port environment without a ready ticket, if your ticket is not ready for you to go into the port, we can capture that data.
That is,
yes.
if you are not booked on ATO.
If you're not booked on ATO, or if your booking is not ready to go into the port. Because remember, you make a booking, just like the airline example we gave.
Yeah.
You have booked your ticket, but you haven't gotten your boarding pass. So you have no business in the departure lounge.
Okay.
So you can't make your way there. So if, for instance, anybody helps you make their way there, there's an infraction committed by you, and there's an infraction committed by that person.
Is there any penalty for that?
So the penalty is with the approval of the Nigerian Ports Authority or the Lagos State government, depending on the final destination of the truck can be mobilized. So by mobilization, it means that your ticket will be invalidated. So you will not be able to gain access into the port. So you've wasted that ticket and you've wasted the time you've spent trying to approach the port.
Are you sure that will not also compound the problem?
So what happens is that if your ticket is now invalidated, the LASMA has now become authorized to tow you away from the port's access road. A more lasting consequence is that the truck itself is blacklisted. So you won't be able to do business. You can't book anymore with that truck for a while. So this consequence management...
That would hurt?
Yes, that would hurt. So that consequence management is compelling, or will I say persuading.
Yeah, because, I mean, the Nigerian, the only way you can hit him is in the pocket.
Yes, if something touches his pocket, then he's going to react.
It's compelling.
Yes.
Of course, it has to be compelling. But in spite of the often cited gains, some of which you have also mentioned, there are those who complain that traffic has not completely disappeared. Why? Is it because of those pushbacks that you talked about?
So one is the pushbacks, like I mentioned earlier. The other is that I mentioned the issue of infrastructure. So we still don't have the sufficient level of infrastructure, particularly roads, to take all of the traffic. It's true that the traffic has been streamlined and regulated, but if the road is not enough, the road is not enough. And it is not something you use technology to wipe away the infrastructure deficit. So if you take the Tinkan Island port, for example, the access road, My 2, MTN bus stop, those areas are still under construction. And because of that, traffic diversion leading to snarling of traffic has resulted. So that affects the ease of movement of both trucks and other passenger segments.
Now, okay, go ahead.
What are TTP's plans and what agencies are you working with? And what agencies are you hoping to work with for better results?
Okay, so currently our two big partners are the Nigerian Ports Authority and Lagos State government for obvious reasons. The Nigerian Ports Authority is the technical regulator of the ports, and the Lagos State government as the landlord of the state, and also the backbone for the enforcement for the call-up system are our two key partners. We are also speaking with the various transporter groups because their input and involvement is all the reason why we're here. So we are speaking and working with them on a going forward basis. We are also discussing with other government agencies like the Nigerian Shippers Council and also the Federal Ministry of Transportation about extending the gains of the call-up system to other ports, including the Lekki Deep Sea ports, the One port, and other ports across Nigeria. We are also looking at expanding the use of the call-up system for what we call inland container depots or container warehouses situated around the country. So that way you can have one multimodal means of scheduling truck and container movements across the country. And that data can be available to the government on one screen for infrastructure development.
Pardon me, let me just take you back a bit.
Yes, ma'am.
We spoke about penalties for being found on the road when you don't have a proper ATO call-up,
Yes.
whatever. Are those penalties being applied?
They are being applied.
So how come there's still trucks on the road?
Okay. Maybe I didn't put it well at the beginning. There are people who we refer to as principalities and powers. So these principalities and powers may influence or impede the appliance of the consequence management on certain categories of trucks. Again, come back to being in Nigeria.
Depends on who the owner of the truck is, right?
Depending on who the owner of the truck is and who is on their payroll.
Do you know who I am? All that again?
Correct. It works all the time. So we've also had scenarios where after your truck is blacklisted, then someone goes to register the same truck with another plate number. Yeah, so those incidences occur. we're making effort to ensure that the plate numbers that are registered on the platform are the same as the ones on the database of the relevant agencies. But because of the way we handle data in Nigeria, they are not all on one screen. So that effort has been quite an uphill, but we're working on it.
You know, the only thing I can say is good luck.
Thank you.
I don't know what else.
I mean, that sounds so. I give up.
Because, I mean, you know the kind of conversations that we had about this. One of them said they had about 13 or 16 associations.
Yes, and they're
all
growing.
working
And
there.
they're growing.
And they're all principalities?
Growing.
Yes.
Okay.
Still counting. Counting.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Jama Onwubuari is co-founder and managing director of Trucks Transit Parks Limited, TTP. Thank you so much.